I never thought coming home 2 days early would end in betrayal, or in police lights flickering across my white curtains before sunrise. But that's exactly what happened. I walked through my front door, dragging a small suitcase behind me, still smelling like menthol rub and my sister's guest room detergent. I'd cut my visit short. My migraines had flared up in Flagstaff, and all I wanted was to be back in my own bed. Instead, the moment I stepped inside, I stopped cold. The scent hit me first. Sharp, chemical, wet, fresh paint. I turned toward the hallway, heart already pounding in a way that had nothing to do with my head. My bedroom door, my door, was wide open. The walls I'd painted pale yellow 5 years ago, the ones Harold had helped me tape off when his arthritis was acting up, were being erased. White rollers covered the walls in thick, glossy strokes, not a gentle eggshell either. Stark white, the kind of cold you see in hospitals. Two men I didn't recognize were working inside, paint trays at their feet. One had earbuds in, the other gave me a half nod like I was a stranger in my own house. And leaning against the hallway wall like she owned the damn place was Marissa, my daughter-in-law. A smug half smile on her face, like I was the one intruding. "We're updating it," she said, like that explained anything. Like I was supposed to say thank you. I didn't argue. Not right away. Something in me folded up like an old envelope. I just nodded, slowly, and walked past her into the kitchen. My legs felt strange under me. I pulled out a chair, sat down, and stared at the counter for a long time. My coffee maker was gone, replaced with some sleek machine that looked like it belonged in a tech showroom. I didn't ask questions, but I didn't sleep that night either. And then came the morning knock. Loud, sharp. Police. I opened the door in my robe. Marissa was already there, barefoot and screaming like someone was being murdered, flailing dramatically in the living room. Her phone was in her hand. Her voice cracked like a fire alarm. "She did it! She's trying to get us arrested!" The officer barely glanced at her. He looked at me, quiet, measured. Then he asked, "Ma'am, are you Mrs. Simmons? We need to speak with you about a recent attempted deed transfer." That was the moment. The exact second I knew. They weren't just painting over my walls. They were painting me out of my life. The day was September 3rd, a Monday. Dry heat still clung to the Arizona air, the kind that made your skin feel tight and your thoughts slow. I'd only been gone 4 days. I wasn't supposed to be home yet. The original plan had been to stay with my sister Margaret until Sunday evening. A quiet visit, some puzzles, some gossip, and a break from the tension I'd stopped naming out loud. But by Monday morning, the headache started. One of those silent migraines that crawls behind your eyes and makes sound unbearable. And something else too. Homesickness. Not for the people, for the silence of my own house, for the sound of the bathroom fan that didn't work right, for my space. So I left early. Took the 3:15 Greyhound and didn't tell anyone. Why would I? Mark had told me they'd be out of town anyway. Some church retreat up near Sedona. "We won't be here, Mom, but relax and enjoy the time away." He lied. I found out later they'd canceled the trip. Without a word, the house was supposed to be empty, but instead, it was full of paint fumes and strangers, and Marissa's perfume lingering where my eucalyptus should have been. That bedroom they were repainting? Mine. Not just because I slept in it, but because I owned it. The whole house, every square inch of it, belonged to me. Mark and Marissa had moved into the back suite 3 years ago. 2020, the year the world broke. He'd lost some contract job, and she'd been furloughed from the physical therapy clinic. I didn't hesitate. I offered the space. I even helped them refinish it. Temporarily, he'd said, just until things settled. But temporary has a way of turning permanent when people get comfortable. And they got comfortable, started making changes. First it was little things, throw pillows, new light fixtures, rearranging my pantry like I didn't know how I liked things. Then bigger ones, I'd find my dishes gone, my grandmother's serving spoons donated, my framed photos replaced with their wedding canvas. Marissa called it modernizing. I called it whitewashing. They were quiet about it, sneaky. But I let it slide, because what else could I do? I'm not a screamer. Never have been. I kept a smile, I kept my peace, and I told myself it was still my home. Until that paint hit the wall. Until I walked in and saw the yellow Harold had picked, the soft gold that looked like morning light, gone. Slathered over like it was a mistake that never should have been there. And now the police were asking questions. And Marissa was pretending to be the victim. The day before the police came, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of tea I didn't drink and thought about everything I'd let slide. It wasn't just the paint. It was never just the paint. It was the way Marissa looked at me when I used my flip phone instead of a smartphone, like I was speaking Latin. It was her passive-aggressive comments about how cute it was that I still ironed pillowcases. It was Mark repeating her words like they were gospel, like he didn't grow up under the roof. I scrubbed with vinegar and love for 30 years. I had been chipped away slowly, like rust on metal. You don't notice it until you feel the collapse. A few months back, I'd caught her going through the built-ins in the hallway, the ones with my mother's porcelain birds. I didn't say anything then either. She said she was dusting, but afterward, 3 of them were gone. When I asked about them, she shrugged and said I must have given them away, like my memory was the problem. That was her favorite tactic. Are you sure you didn't misplace it, Joan? You've been a little forgetful lately, haven't you? She said it with syrup on her voice. But it wasn't sweet. It was poison. Mark didn't defend me. Not once. He used to. Years ago, when Marissa and I first started butting heads, he'd try to smooth things over. She didn't mean it like that, he'd say. She's just high-strung. Then he stopped. I guess it was easier to pretend nothing was wrong than admit he'd picked a wife who wanted me erased. But I saw it, in the way she'd subtly rearrange things, make decisions about the house without asking me. Like I was a long-term guest overstaying my welcome? She started referring to the back suite as our house, not Mom's house. Never that. And Mark let her. But painting my bedroom, the one room they'd never touched, that wasn't passive. That was deliberate. It wasn't updating. It was a message. It said, you don't belong here anymore. It said, this isn't yours. It said, you can be replaced. That night, I stood in the doorway of that half-painted room and stared at the white wall. My chest felt hollow, like grief, but colder. They were painting me out like a mistake. I touched the edge of the door frame, where Harold's knuckle had once left a dent while carrying in our dresser. Still there, still mine, and something inside me hardened. Not angry, not yet, just done. I didn't scream. I didn't confront. I didn't even raise my voice. That wasn't how I fought. I fought with records. That evening, while Marissa blasted her yoga music in the back suite and Mark grilled chicken like it was just another Monday, I went into my sewing room. The room no one entered but me. The one with the broken lock I never bothered fixing because respect should have been enough. In the corner stood an old filing cabinet. Beige. Ugly. Heavy. They probably thought it was full of fabric scraps and old coupons. They were wrong. I slid open the bottom drawer and pulled out the manila folder labeled House Legal. My handwriting, still steady, still sharp. Inside was everything. The original deed, the title transfer after Harold died, insurance documents, the property tax statements with my name on every single line. I wasn't a co-signer. I wasn't on a lease. I was the sole title holder, the owner. No one else. No rent had ever been charged to Mark and Marissa. That had been my mistake. I'd let them move in without paperwork because I believed in family. Believed in helping when your kids were struggling. But I'd kept everything else. The mortgage was paid off in 2012. I handled the bills, the taxes, the insurance, all in my name. They like to pretend I was fragile, a little forgetful, a little old-fashioned. But I wasn't stupid, and I wasn't powerless. Behind that folder were a dozen more. Every utility bill, every repair invoice, every receipt. I even had a handwritten ledger where I noted which ones they said they'd take over the internet bill, the electric, and when they stopped paying them. I didn't push back at the time, but I wrote it all down. They thought they were gradually taking over the house. They weren't. They were renting space in my home for free, and they were about to find out what that meant legally. At the back of the folder was an envelope Harold had written on years ago, just in case. Inside was the notarized amendment to our will, naming me as sole beneficiary and giving me full rights over the property and all shared assets. He always worried about things I never thought would happen. Turns out, he was right too. I stood there in that dim room, the whir of the ceiling fan clicking above me, holding proof that I was not the one being erased. They were. They just didn't know it yet. Tuesday morning, the sun hadn't even hit the kitchen window when I dialed Elaine Granger. Elaine and I met at Bible study in 1987. She's the kind of woman who always brings a lemon pound cake and a copy of last week's city council agenda. She was a notary public for 30 years, worked part-time at the county office before she retired. Sharp as a tack, never missed a detail. We'd fallen out of touch, as people do. But when she picked up, it was like no time had passed. "Joni?" Her voice lifted. "You all right? Do you still volunteer at the senior legal aid clinic?" A pause. Then, "What's happened?" "I need a real estate attorney. Quiet. Thorough. Someone who knows how to file fast." Elaine didn't ask questions. Just gave me a name and said, "Tell Gina Patel I sent you. She owes me 3 favors and a bundt cake." By 2 p.m., I was sitting in Gina Patel's office on 3rd Street, across from a tall woman in a burgundy blazer who looked like she'd cross-examine her own shadow. She asked me what I wanted. I want them out, but more than that, I want to make sure they don't get a penny from what they tried to steal. She nodded once. "Show me what you brought." I handed her the folder. She flipped through it quickly, pausing only to read the deed and the amendment to the will. When she saw the ledger with the utility breakdowns, she gave a short, approving breath through her nose. "Did you ever give them power of attorney?" "No," I said. "But they tried. Back in 2021, Mark brought home a stack of papers, said it was just a precaution, in case something happened. I read the fine print. He had no idea I even knew what a limited POA was." Her brow arched. "Good instincts. Most people your age don't check." "I've been underestimated before," I said simply. She leaned back. "This is winnable. You've got clean title, documented history of occupancy, and no lease agreements. They're squatters with a smear of entitlement. We'll file an immediate cease and desist on property alterations, then request a temporary injunction." She hesitated, then added, "I'd also like to start a forensic audit of any changes to your deed or insurance over the last 6 months. That caught me off guard. "You think they already tried something?" "I've seen people do worse for less." I nodded. My hands were trembling slightly as I gathered the papers back into the folder. "Miss Simmons, Gina said before I left, you're not alone in this. You've got rights, and we're going to exercise every one of them." For the first time in weeks, I felt taller walking out than I did walking in. When I got home from Gina's office, Marissa was sitting in the living room, eating a salad from a plastic container. She didn't look up, just muttered, "Don't forget your doctor's appointment is Thursday." As if we were still pretending, I didn't say a word, because now I had a plan. My objective was simple: reclaim control of my home, stop any unauthorized changes, and uncover exactly how far they'd tried to push their fraud. Gina had given me next steps, real steps. No false hope, no gentle hand-holding, just legal leverage. That same afternoon, she filed a cease and desist order through the county court. It would be served within 48 hours, barring them from any further renovations or structural changes until ownership was confirmed. That meant no more painting, no more furniture hauling, and certainly no installation of the ugly vinyl flooring rolls I'd seen stashed in the garage. She also submitted a request to the recorder's office, a full audit of any attempted property transfers, liens, or refinancing actions in the past 12 months. Most people wouldn't know how to find that. But Gina did, and so did Elaine, who texted me 5 minutes after the filing. Saw the record pull request. Smart move. You'll want to check your spam folder too. Some of these title scammers love using online portals. Spam folder. It hadn't even crossed my mind. I opened my email and scrolled past ads for anti-aging cream and cruise deals I'd never take. There it was, 4 days old. Your EZ Title Now application is processing. I clicked. The sender address looked legitimate enough, but the details inside turned my stomach. Applicant, Marissa Langston property address, my house, status, pending verification. Transfer type, change of tenancy. Digital form 22C. There was a line that made my skin go cold. Initiated by marissa.langston.workmail@. She used her work address. Bold and stupid. I forwarded the email to Gina, added a note. Found this in spam. Do not recall initiating. Then I sat back and stared at my monitor. For months, I'd told myself they were just inconsiderate. Just stressed. Just adjusting. But now I saw it clearly. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a planned removal. They wanted me out, legally and physically, before I even realized what was happening. And they wanted to walk away clean, wearing fresh smiles and fake grief for the neighbors. But I wasn't going anywhere, and I wasn't going to smile. Not anymore. That night I didn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table with the overhead light off, just the glow from the stove clock and my laptop screen keeping me company. The email from EZ Title Now sat open on the screen like a blinking warning light. I read it again and again. The words didn't change, but something shifted inside me. I wasn't confused anymore. I wasn't questioning what I saw. I was looking directly at the first breadcrumb they'd left behind. Marissa wasn't just scheming. She was moving. Gina's paralegal, a sharp young woman named Tamika, replied to my email within the hour. She had already traced the IP address from the digital application. It matched the network location of Marissa's workplace, a boutique rehab center over in Tempe. I stared at that sentence for a long time. She'd done it from her desk, probably between clients, probably while I was sitting in my own house, watching her wipe down the counters like she was doing me a favor. I logged into the Maricopa County Recorder's website like Gina instructed, entered my parcel number, waited. There it was. Scheduled. Title Action Review, September 12th, 9 a.m. Request type, change of tenancy/occupant ownership. They'd filed it under digital transfer pending verification. I leaned back in my chair, cold washed down my arms. Not fear. Confirmation. I took a screenshot, saved the document, then backed it up twice. Once on a thumb drive, once on my old cloud account I hadn't touched in years. I printed a hard copy for Gina's folder. All of it. Documented. Evidence. Outside, the house was silent, but I could feel them in the back suite. Marissa watching her late-night true crime shows, Mark probably scrolling through home, remodeling ideas they never had the money for. They thought they were 2 steps ahead. They didn't realize they'd just given me a map. I closed the laptop, folded the printout neatly, and tucked it into the manila folder. The more I looked at the paper, the clearer it all became. This wasn't just an attempted grab. This was identity theft, dressed up in polite conversation. Erasure hidden in paint strokes. Theft disguised as, quote, concern. They were trying to make me disappear, silently, legally, without a scene. But I'd been quiet long enough. They were about to find out what happens when the woman they underestimated decides she's not going anywhere. The next morning, I made coffee in the old drip pot they tried to hide in the garage. I found it sitting behind a crate of seasonal decor, buried like trash. I cleaned it out, ran vinegar through it twice, and placed it right back on the counter where it belonged. That was my quiet rebellion. While the kitchen filled with that familiar smell, I sat down at my laptop and opened the county recorder's site again. I typed slow but deliberate. Parcel number. Status check. 1 click at a time. Still scheduled. September 12th. 1 week away. I took a breath, then opened a new tab and logged into the neighborhood HOA portal. A login I hadn't used in over a year, because Marissa said she'd handle it. Another quiet takeover. Password still worked. And inside the records, I found something else. A request filed under Langston Household Structural Modification Notice dated 3 days ago. The form listed proposed changes to, quote, primary suite configuration, bathroom accessibility upgrades, and entryway widening. It wasn't just a paint job. They were planning to remodel my bedroom into their new master suite. I forwarded the request to Gina. Less than 30 minutes later, Tamika wrote back, confirmed. These forms are often used to suggest owner intent in occupancy disputes. Combined with the pending deed transfer, it strengthens your case. Keep pulling receipts. So I did. I went through my bank statements, found every auto-pay withdrawal for insurance, gas, water, trash, all under my account. All going back years. They'd never once paid a full bill. Not really. Mark would Venmo me $40 here or there with notes like, "Thanks, Mom," or for groceries, but never anything close to what he promised when they moved in. I printed it all. I opened my old filing cabinet again and added a tab. Fraud attempts, 2025. That's how I operate. Paper, labels, evidence. When Gina called later that day, her voice was calm but energized. "We've got what we need to move forward on 2 fronts," she said. 1. We submit the cease and desist in person to trigger immediate review. 2. We preempt the title transfer with an owner statement and request for a fraud alert on the parcel number. Then she paused. "There's one more thing you should consider." "What?" She hesitated. "If they try to use forged signatures or submit false documentation, we need fingerprints, anything physical, wine glasses, doorknobs, documents they've handled." I looked across the room to the glass Marissa left on the table last night after dinner, still smudged with her lipstick. "I think I've got just the thing." That evening, they made dinner. A rare gesture. Mark grilled pork chops out back. Marissa tossed a salad she didn't eat. The table was set with cloth napkins. My napkins. The ones from our 40th anniversary. I knew something was coming. They waited until I'd taken 3 bites before springing it. "We need to talk about making the house safer," Marissa said. Her tone had that manufactured softness I'd grown to hate. "For everyone." She slid a brochure across the table. Then another. All printed in color, glossy like magazines. Senior-friendly upgrades, modernizing for mobility, peace of mind for aging in place. I didn't touch them. Mark spoke next. "It's just, this house isn't really working anymore. Too many tight corners, too many stairs. We've been researching options." Marissa's smile widened. "Like the facility near St. Paul's. It's gorgeous. Open dining plan, on-site medical staff, activities, games, yoga for seniors." I stared at them both. "Why the sudden urgency?" I asked. She didn't even blink. "Because we've already started the paperwork," she said brightly. "We had a call with the admissions coordinator last week. They said you'd love it there." The air went still, like a storm holding its breath. I didn't flinch. I didn't raise my voice. Instead, I reached out slowly, picked up Marissa's wine glass from in front of her, and brought it to the kitchen. "Why did you do that?" she called after me. I rinsed my hands, dried the glass with a towel I'd never seen before. Beige, monogrammed with their initials. "Just cleaning up," I said. Back at the table, I looked between them. My son, my daughter-in-law, 2 people I'd housed, fed, supported, tolerated for years. And now they were planning to move me out like expired milk. "I appreciate your concern," I said slowly. "But this house is mine. I feel quite safe here." Mark opened his mouth, but I cut him off with a raised finger. "I let you stay because family helps each other. But this," I tapped the stack of brochures, "was not help. This is eviction dressed up in sweet talk." Marissa's smile finally cracked. Mark looked away. I stood, gathered my dishes, and washed them by hand. The wine glass? I sealed it in a freezer bag and labeled it. Date, time, initials. Then I added it to my new folder. Because they'd just crossed a line they couldn't step back from. And now I wasn't just holding evidence. I was building a case. The next morning, my inbox held 2 new emails from Gina, both with attachments, both damning. The subject lines said it all. Unauthorized notary appointment. Joan Simmons, denied claim. Homeowners insurance, Fraud investigation attached. I opened the first. Tamika had traced a request submitted through a mobile notary service I'd never heard of, one that operated entirely online, offering expedited documentation for elderly and disabled clients. The request was dated last Thursday. It included my name, my home address, and a blurry digital signature that didn't even match my real one. Gina had already flagged it. Attempted deed reassignment via forged signature, she wrote. Notary flagged as suspicious and has now been removed from state license roster. We're reporting to the district fraud unit. I closed the document and opened the second. That one made my stomach turn. An insurance claim had been filed in my name, submitted under my policy number, citing extensive storm damage to primary residence. Estimated damage, $42,800. But there had been no storm, not even a heavy wind that month. I remembered that week clearly. I'd pruned the oleander bushes myself. Nothing was damaged. The adjuster's notes confirmed it. No observable damage to structure or property. Fraud suspected. Filed by Marissa's email. The funds had been requested to be direct deposited into a business account under Langston Wellness Consulting, her maiden name, a shell company. I printed everything, highlighted it, added it to the folder. This wasn't incompetence or carelessness. This was a system, a layered scheme of lies, forged documents, false identities, all circling the same target. Me, my property, my name, my identity. It's hard to explain how grief and anger can sit next to each other in your chest, one cold, one hot. But I felt them both. I felt Harold's absence like a bruise. He would have caught this faster. Or maybe they wouldn't have dared if he were still alive. But I was alive, and I wasn't alone anymore. Elaine came by that afternoon with lemon bars and a printer toner cartridge. We sat at the table while I walked her through everything. She didn't say much, just kept nodding, her face calm, her eyes sharp. When I finished, she patted my hand. You know what this is, right? What? This is attempted property theft, elder fraud, identity manipulation. I nodded. And then she said, good. Now let's burn them with it. The worst part wasn't the paint, wasn't the forged signature, or the fake notary, or the attempted insurance scam. The worst part came on Wednesday morning, when Gina called me with a voice I didn't recognize. Joan, she said. Not Miss Simmons this time. Just my name. Soft. Careful. You might want to sit down. I already was. She took a breath. We found a refinance. My blood ran cold. Of what? Your home. No, I said flatly. The mortgage was paid off. In 2012. It was, she agreed. But someone reopened a lien on the property through a shell LLC, a dormant company under the name Golden Horizon Contracting. I blinked. I knew that name. That was Mark's business. Or had been. A failed one, shut down years ago after he got sued for breach of contract on a patio build in Mesa. Joan, they used that LLC to apply for a refinance on your property 3 months ago. Claimed they were the title holding entity. The application was digitally signed and routed through a third-party lender based in Nevada. The loan was approved and disbursed. How much? $219,000. I closed my eyes. Where did it go? Gina's voice flattened. Into a trust account under the name Marissa Ann Torres Langston. Her maiden name. It wasn't even in both their names. Just hers. Like he was already written off. Or she was the real architect behind this from the start. They borrowed against the house and funneled the money, I said slowly. Without my knowledge. Without consent. Using a dead company. And my address. Correct. And now there's a $219,000 lien. Sitting on my home. Yes. I was quiet for a long time. Gina didn't rush me. I thought about Harold. I thought about the way he used to triple-check the mail, how he taught Mark to balance a checkbook at the kitchen table, the same table where Marissa now spread out her vision boards and wellness brand crap. I opened my desk drawer, pulled out the calculator. They'd tried to erase me for less than $250,000. That's all I was worth to them, That night I cried, not for the money, for the betrayal, for the boy I raised, who used to cry when his dog had to be put down, who once promised, in a letter I still have, that he'd never leave me in a home. I cried for the husband who wasn't here to stop any of this. Then I wiped my eyes, stood up, and opened the evidence binder. I added the refinance, and I made a new tab. Criminal activity financial instruments, because this wasn't just a family dispute anymore. It was a crime, and I was going to treat it like one. That night, I didn't turn on the lights. I sat in the living room in the dark, the house humming around me. The old pipes, the ticking clock on the mantel, the soft whir of the ceiling fan. My house, still mine, for now. But it didn't feel like it. I held Harold's flannel robe in my lap, the one he used to wear when he'd water the lawn barefoot, even in January. I hadn't washed it since he passed. The smell was almost gone now, but I could still pretend. I thought about how hard we worked for this place, how we skipped vacations, how we did our own repairs, patching drywall and recaulking the tub ourselves. I thought about how he mowed the yard well into his 70s, grumbling the whole time but smiling when I brought out lemonade. We didn't have much, but we earned everything we had. And now it was all tangled in lies. My son, had used a dead business to pull a loan out of thin air and bury my home under it. And Marissa, she was smarter than I ever gave her credit for. Cold, methodical. She'd wrapped herself in soft fabrics and fake sympathy for years. She didn't raise her voice, she didn't slam doors. She made her moves in silence. People like her don't stab you in the chest. They hand you tea and tell you it's poison while smiling. I curled my hands into fists, then let them go. I wasn't crying anymore. I wasn't broken. I was clear. This house wasn't just square footage. It wasn't just drywall and deed documents. It was my last tie to a life that meant something. The last place Harold was alive. The last place I had peace. And they'd tried to wipe it all clean, like I was clutter. Like I was in the way of some fantasy they'd built on Instagram boards and Zillow listings. They wanted their future, but they tried to steal my past to get it. And for what? A loan that wouldn't last the year. A lie they thought would never get caught. They thought I'd be too tired, too confused, too old to fight. And I had been tired for a long time, but not anymore. Because tonight, as I stared into the dark, I didn't feel grief. I felt resolve. I would not be painted over. I would not be erased. And I sure as hell wasn't done. By Thursday morning, I had a plan. It started with a lie. The county inspector called. I told Marissa casually over breakfast. Something about verifying owner consent before the remodel. She froze mid-bite, her spoon hovering over a half-eaten bowl of acai she probably couldn't pronounce last year. They said they need to see the space, I added, and confirm everything matches what's on file. Her face twitched. I kept going. They're coming Tuesday at 10. I told them you'd both be home. Mark looked up from his phone. Why do they need to talk to us? Because you're the ones who submitted the plans, aren't you? I smiled, sweet as pie. That was the bait. Then I called Gina. I've set the trap, I told her. Tuesday at 10. Good, she said. We'll file the injunction first thing Monday morning. I'll request a detective from the Property Crimes Unit to attend the inspection, in plain clothes. You'll need a locksmith too, just in case things go sideways. I took a deep breath. I'll be ready. She paused. Joan, this is going to get loud. I'm counting on it. The next 3 days, I prepared like a woman at war. I gathered every document into labeled tabs, laminated key items, and laid them out in a clean binder. I made a copy for the detective, one for the inspector, one for Gina. I placed the wine glass in a padded case and stored it in the freezer, fingerprints preserved. Elaine dropped off a spare voice recorder from her old notary days, just in case anyone forgets what they said. By Sunday night, I couldn't sleep. I walked the house like it was a battlefield. Every room held something they tried to erase. Harold's toolbox under the sink, The little chip in the tile from when Mark dropped his cereal bowl at 8 years old. The yellow paint still peeking out behind the closet trim where the roller didn't reach. My history wasn't gone, just buried. Tuesday came fast. At 9:45 sharp, I brewed fresh coffee and set out a tray of lemon bars like it was a book club meeting. I wore Harold's old watch on my wrist, the gold one he saved up for our 20th anniversary. At 9:58, the county inspector arrived. At 9:59, the detective stepped in, flashing a quiet badge. And at exactly 10 a.m., Marissa walked into the living room in yoga pants, holding her phone, smiling like nothing was about to explode. "Morning," I said cheerfully. "Shall we discuss ownership?" The room felt too quiet, like the air itself was bracing for impact. Marissa sat on the edge of the sofa, legs crossed, phone in her lap, her expression stuck between pleasant and wary. Mark stood by the fireplace with his arms folded, pretending he wasn't nervous. The inspector laid out his clipboard. "We're here to verify that the requested renovations match the permits filed and that all structural changes have appropriate authorization from the title holder." Marissa flicked her eyes toward me. "Of course," she said. "We've been working closely with my mother-in-law. She's just been overwhelmed lately." The detective didn't say a word, just stood in the corner, hands behind his back, watching. I opened the binder and slid it across the coffee table. "Before we begin," I said calmly, "I'd like to submit proof of sole ownership. Title, deed, tax records, and a recent letter from my attorney verifying no transfer has occurred." The inspector glanced at the documents, then back at Marissa. "That's fine," she said, her voice just slightly higher than before. "This is probably just a paperwork mix-up." The inspector nodded. "Actually, ma'am, we did notice some inconsistencies." He reached into his own folder and pulled out a printed form, the same digital notary request I'd received in my inbox. "This shows a request for transfer submitted under Ms. Simmons's name, digitally signed. Do you recognize this?" Marissa's smile froze. "That's not real," she snapped. "It's probably spam. I didn't submit anything." The detective stepped forward. "It was traced to your IP address, from your place of employment." Mark shifted his weight. "Wait, hold on. This doesn't have to be." The detective cut him off. "Sir, your name appears on a refinance application using a business LLC flagged as inactive. We've confirmed the loan amount. We're also reviewing the disbursement of funds into a private trust under your wife's maiden name." And then it happened. Marissa stood, but not gracefully. She bolted to her feet like someone had slapped her, eyes wide and wild. "This is a trap!" she shrieked. "She's tricking you! This old witch is manipulating everyone!" The detective raised a hand. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to step outside while we review documents." "I didn't do anything wrong!" she screamed, voice cracking. "You can't prove anything!" "We can," I said quietly. "And we will." Mark didn't speak. He just stared at the floor, pale, silent, hollowed out like drywall with nothing behind it. The inspector looked at me and nodded once, respectfully. And for the first time in weeks, I took a deep, clean breath. Not because it was over, but because it had finally begun. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I just started laying things down, one by one. The county inspector sat back on the edge of the armchair, flipping through the documents slowly. The detective stood close, his eyes scanning every line like he already knew how this would end. Mark sat still on the hearth, his hands clenched, sweat beading at his temple. Marissa had been escorted to the porch. Her screeching was muffled by the door. I opened the binder. First page. The spam folder email from Easy Title Now, showing the attempted digital deed transfer. Initiated by Marissa Langston. Timestamped and traced. Second page. Parcel record screenshot from the county recorder's office. It showed the scheduled change of tenancy request they'd filed, without my knowledge, using my identity. Third, the notary fraud. Request filed in my name with a mismatched digital signature. A dead notary account traced to a mobile notary site that no longer existed. Tamika had added an affidavit confirming the forgery. Fourth, the insurance claim, marked, quote, denied, fraud suspected. A false report of storm damage that never occurred, filed under my policy, with funds requested to a trust account under Marissa's maiden name. Fifth, the refinance loan, $219,000, pulled against my fully paid-off home, using a dead LLC that hadn't operated since Mark's failed business collapsed in 2017. Documents confirmed the loan was dispersed into a private account belonging solely to Marissa. I saw the detective's expression shift. He didn't look surprised, just ready. But I wasn't finished. I pulled out the photo, printed in color, 8 by 10, of Marissa standing in my hallway, arms folded, smirking. Painters behind her, mid-roll, turning Harold's soft yellow walls into hospital white. Taken the day I came home early from Flagstaff, I said. The inspector blinked. They were painting without your permission? My bedroom, I said. They told me I should consider moving into assisted living, that they'd already started the paperwork. Then I pulled out one last thing, a zippered plastic evidence bag. Inside it, the wine glass. Marissa's fingerprints, her lipstick print still on the rim. Preserved, cold, ready for lab analysis, if needed, to link her to the forged signatures. The detective didn't touch it, but he nodded, and then the screen flickered to life. Gina Patel, live on Zoom, her tone sharp and practiced. Thank you for joining us. As counsel for Mrs. Simmons, I'd like to state for the record that she is the sole legal owner of this property. All evidence provided today points to deliberate, premeditated real estate fraud involving identity theft, unauthorized lending, and insurance manipulation. She leaned forward. And that's criminal. The detective didn't raise his voice. He just stepped toward the front door, opened it slowly, and called out, "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to step inside for a moment." Marissa reappeared. She wasn't screaming this time, not yet. Her lips were pressed together, jaw tight, arms crossed like a child caught drawing on the walls. But the smugness was gone. The second she saw the evidence binder open on the table, the photos, the emails, the forms with her name typed and signed, her body stiffened like stone. The detective spoke evenly. "Marissa Langston, we've reviewed enough documentation to refer this case to the Financial Crimes Unit for further investigation. At this time, we are not detaining you, but you are strongly advised not to leave town or destroy any documents." Then he looked at me. "Mrs. Simmons, would you like to have the locks changed today?" I didn't hesitate. "Yes," I said. "I brought a locksmith." He stepped in from the front porch, like it had been choreographed. A quiet man with a black toolbox and a look that said he'd seen this all before. That's when she screamed. It didn't come gradually. It erupted, high-pitched, raw, a sound that tore through the room like shattering glass. "You can't do this," she wailed. "This is our house. We planned everything. You old witch, you tricked us." I didn't flinch. Mark finally stood. "Marissa, stop." "No," she howled, rounding on him. "You said she was too soft to fight. You said she'd fold." Mark turned pale. His mouth opened, then closed again like a fish gasping for air. "I gave up everything for this plan," she shrieked. "I put my name on everything. Everything." "That's true," I said, calm as January frost. "You sure did." The locksmith began changing the locks, quiet and efficient. The inspector quietly packed up his forms. Gina's voice crackled from the laptop speaker. "A certified copy of the injunction will be delivered within 24 hours. Mrs. Simmons is legally entitled to change access points and bar entry to any non-title holding occupants until further notice." Marissa backed toward the hallway, eyes wide, breath shallow. Mark didn't follow her. He just sat down, silent, small, like someone who'd finally realized what they'd broken couldn't be fixed. The detective turned to Marissa once more. "If you have anything in the back suite you'd like to retrieve, you'll need to coordinate through your attorney." "I'll burn this house to the ground," she hissed. You won't, I said, because it's not yours to burn. By that evening, the news had already spread. I didn't post anything. I didn't need to. Elaine did what Elaine does best. She made a few friendly calls, starting with the neighborhood watch coordinator, then the church secretary, and finally her bridge partner, who runs the HOA board. By sundown, the story was moving faster than wildfire in a dry canyon. And not a soul was on Marissa's side. I wasn't the one who humiliated them. They did that themselves. At first, I heard whispers from the sidewalk, from the post office line. Then they turned into polite knocks at my door. Joan, I just heard. If you need anything at all. Sweetheart, I never liked the way she talked to you. Mark always seemed so distant since he married her. I'm so sorry. One neighbor left a lemon tree sapling on my porch with a note. Let's replant what they tried to bury. That one made me cry. The church took quick action. Pastor Greg removed Mark and Marissa from the hospitality committee and revoked their access to the retreat lodge, citing ethical concerns. The HOA froze their credentials for the community portal and flagged their back suite for unauthorized renovations. Turns out, they'd filed permits under false pretenses, claiming ownership. That alone carried a fine, and a formal letter was sent by certified mail. But the real blow came Monday. Marissa's employer was notified, anonymously of course, but with attached documentation about pending legal investigations involving financial fraud and identity manipulation. Gina hadn't sent it, but someone did. By Wednesday, she was on indefinite leave. Mark moved out first. I saw him carrying 2 duffel bags down the driveway, stuffing them into the back of a gray Toyota. No goodbye. Not even a glance back. Just silence. 3 blocks down, he checked into a month-to-month rental. Alone. Elaine spotted him at the corner store buying frozen dinners and generic razors. He looks like he aged 10 years in a week, she told me. But he did this to himself. I didn't argue. I hadn't heard a word from either of them since the locksmith changed the last bolt. And I didn't want to, because their world was shrinking. And mine? Mine was getting lighter. I walked my own hallways now without feeling like an intruder. The scent of paint was gone, replaced by fresh lavender sachets I tucked into every drawer. I opened the curtains again. I answered the phone without dread. Because now, when my name came up in the neighborhood, it didn't come with pity. It came with respect. Restitution came quietly, not with sirens or orange jumpsuits, though I admit a part of me would have liked that. But no, this was subtler, and somehow more satisfying. Gina moved fast after the confrontation. By the following week, she'd filed a civil suit seeking damages for fraud, emotional distress, and unauthorized financial manipulation. The case was airtight. We had timelines, signatures, account numbers, even Marissa's voice on the HOA planning call, claiming she was the new legal occupant. The court didn't drag its feet. Within days, we were granted a preliminary lien against both Mark and Marissa's bank accounts. Seizure authorization followed once the refinance documents were ruled fraudulent. The balance? $64,000 frozen, combined. The rest would come later. Mark's name was permanently blacklisted from any licensed contractor list in Arizona. He tried appealing. It didn't go far. His LLC had been dead for years, and the refinancing was considered an abuse of licensure. As for Marissa, her shell company, Langston Wellness Consulting, was dissolved under state fraud statutes. Her professional license as a rehab therapist? Suspended pending review. She tried to file a countersuit. It didn't last 3 weeks. Gina sent back a letter so sharp it read like poetry. Your client's fabricated equity does not hold up against hard title law. And then there were the painters. They came crawling back. Once the investigation flagged the renovations as unauthorized, turns out Marissa had hired them under the table. No permits, no business license, no valid contractor registration in the state. The Department of Consumer Protection fined them $12,500 each and issued statewide cease work orders. One of them called me personally, begging to testify on my behalf if it meant reducing his penalty. "I didn't know, ma'am," he said. "She told us you were in a memory care facility." I didn't yell. I didn't even hang up. I just said, "Next time you walk into someone's bedroom with a roller, maybe check whose name is on the mortgage." Click. But the best moment? It came in the mail. A thick envelope from Gina's office. Inside, stamped and certified documentation. The lien cleared, the fraudulent loan fully reversed. The county record restored to its original form. My name, my title, my home. Not theirs. Not ever. I stared at that document for a long time, hands trembling. Then I walked it straight to the front door, pulled down the old family photo that used to hang there, the one with Mark and Marissa standing too close to me, and replaced it with the deed. Framed, visible, final. Let them come by. Let anyone knock. This house? This story? It ends with my name.